Hello guys. So, I've often said on this channel that I want to talk about challenging experiences that are arising for me, as and when they're arising, because there's a power in that. There's a power in speaking about how to stay conscious within challenging experiences when challenging experiences are actually arising. It's easier to kind of transmit the message of how to do it when it's actually happening. So I've been having this kind of fight and flight reaction come up in my nervous system, and I don't really understand what it is, but certain things can trigger it. It can be described as a really horrible feeling of stress and a kind of feeling of tightness in my brain. And a feeling of fight or flight and anger. And this was arising within my experience about 10 minutes ago. And what I noticed is that if I just completely surround the experience of it with my presence, if I gently surround the experience of whatever's arising within my body with my presence, then that experience that's coming up in the body doesn't create suffering in the mind. Now, I don't want to suffer in the mind. I would rather be free. I would rather be at peace. I would rather be present. So I have a choice. Be fully present within the feelings in my body, gently surrounding the feelings within my body, the feeling of stress, even though that's just a label. Really, it's just an energy. It's an energy that's come up in my body, an energy of fight or flight that's come up in my body. Some sort of old stress. Now, if I surround it with my presence, if I move into it and gently touch it with my awareness, gently touch my body with my awareness, then that reaction doesn't rise up into the mind. And there's something very precious about doing this. Because if you do this, there's something very precious about doing this. Because if you make this choice to stay present when a reaction is arising, instead of being pulled into thinking, to stay present, instead of being pulled into the mind, then in order to do that, in order to not be pulled into the mind, in order to stay with your attention in the feelings, in order to catch the energy at its root, which is the feeling sense in the body, and not be pulled into the mind. You have to become very present. You really have to become very present. Especially if the reaction's strong. Especially if the reaction is intense. If the reaction is intense within your body, your presence needs to be quite strong in order to not be pulled into the mind. And that's why I say there's something very precious in being able to do this. Because when you practice this, you can use these activating emotional, psychological reactions to actually drive you into a stronger place of presence. You can use these reactions to brighten your consciousness, to enliven your consciousness. You can actually use these very reactions, the very reactions which are, in a certain sense, attempting to pull you into unconsciousness. You can use these very reactions to help drive you into a brighter consciousness or a higher consciousness, whatever words you want to call it. And it's useful to disidentify to a certain extent from the energy that is arising within the body. And it's useful to see what is arising in the body as an energy of its own accord. Now that energy, say in my case fight or flight, could, if I wasn't present, if I wasn't conscious with it, it could become a fearful, wounded sense of self, which I identify with. But if I just catch the pure energy of it before it forms into that, then there is something just unbelievably wonderful about doing that. Something unbelievably wonderful arises within your experience when you manage to do that. And you see that all of these reactions are actually grace in disguise. Or as Adyashanti, and I think possibly Ram Dass would call it, fierce grace. Fierce grace comes in the form of everything we don't want. The reason for that is that the number one way to awaken to being, the number one way, a way to awaken to something that is beyond suffering, is to accept that within yourself which you deem to be unacceptable. As Eckhart Tolle says, acceptance of the unacceptable is the highest form of grace in this world. takes a gentle, sincere, alertness and I want to say dedication, but I don't want to give a word that implies too much willpower. Okay, my friends, thank you for listening.